We are diving into the greatest and still unsolved mystery in history, a mystery that left emperors helpless, bankrupted collectors, and even surpassed the greatest cryptologists of the 20th century, including those brilliant minds who cracked Japan's purple cipher during World War II, yet could not solve this one. We are examining a mystical subject. Our topic, the Voynich Manuscript. Even if it has no official name, it is known by these two names, Bineca MS-408 and Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript takes its name from the Polish-born book collector Wilfrid Michael Voynich, who purchased it in 1912. At first glance, it may look like a random, brown-covered, worn-out old book, but its depth is revealed only once you open its cover. You're at the point where logic ends, or perhaps where your logic begins to work. What you encounter feels like an explosion of knowledge that does not belong to this world. As you turn the pages, you step into a new world. Plants with no biological counterpart in our world, unknown species that look as if they came from outer space or another dimension. Miniature, naked women with pregnant appearances, bathing inside strange plumbing systems filled with green, unknown liquids. And wrapping all of this together, a mysterious script unlike anything else in human history, one in which not a single word has been read or understood to this day. For centuries, people have tried to understand this book, unable to decide whether it was a key containing universal knowledge or the greatest prank in history. Don't say, "What kind of prank is that?" because I recently saw someone who placed a statue in the sea and said they were playing a joke on future generations. So what do the concrete pieces of evidence we have actually tell us? Let's dive a little deeper into this 15th century enigma and break it apart. First, let's look at whether the book is original by examining the scientific facts. If we ask whether this book is a modern forgery, the answer is absolutely no. Because carbon dating tests conducted at the University of Arizona in 2009 clearly and indisputably showed that when these parchments were examined, they were produced between 1404 and 1438. In other words, the object we have in our hands is undeniably an original work from the Middle Ages. What was even more interesting was this. Handwriting analyses revealed a shocking truth. This book was not the delirium of a lonely person who had lost their sanity. If it were, we could say it was written by a madman. The subtle variations in the handwriting show that the book was written by 5 different scribes. And this shows us something important. 5 different insane people could not have come together and created such a work. This was a team effort. More than one person knew this strange writing system and could write it fluently. Who knows, maybe they were the upper mind. So who handled this book before it reached us today? The story of its past goes all the way back to Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II. Rudolph II was known for his obsession with alchemy and the occult sciences. It is said that he paid a full 600 ducats of gold for this book, which when considered in today's terms, represents an enormous fortune. An amount greater than the price of a mansion. Surely a great emperor would not pay such a sum for nothing, right? The emperor believed this book contained ancient secrets, and that by deciphering it, he could attain mystical powers. The book passed from hand to hand for centuries, drove alchemists mad, was preserved in its original form for centuries in Jesuit libraries, and was finally rediscovered in 1912 by the antiquarian Wilfrid Voynich, whose name it bears today. When we examine the content of the book, things become even more complex and harder to make sense of. The book appears to be structured like a medical and botanical text, but the plants are strange. They are a complete nightmare. Most of the drawings display what could be called botanical impossibilities. In many illustrations, we see the root of one plant, the leaf of another, and the flower of an entirely different species combined into a single drawing, something that cannot be logically explained. What did all this mean? It's as if a kind of Frankenstein plants had been created. When we look at the astrology section of the book, we see zodiac signs. But not only that. Around these zodiac signs are dozens of naked female figures connected to stars with strings. There are also clues about where the book was created. The strongest hint about the manuscript's origin appears in a tiny detail within the text. The architecture of a castle mentioned in the book, along with some words and descriptions used for the months, lead us to northern Italy. In other words, the likelihood that the book was produced somewhere near the Italy-France border is very high. Now let's come to the biggest question mark in the book. Voynich. Could this book consist of nothing more than random scribbles, letters, words, or drawings? The disturbing and thought-provoking answer is no. The writing in this book perfectly conforms to the statistical patterns of natural languages, known as Zipf's law. The frequency with which words repeat follows the order and mathematical structure that a real language should have. In other words, this book is not random. It has an incredibly intelligent and carefully adapted system. But this seemingly perfect book also contains strange features that exist in no human language. There are sections where certain words repeat 3 or 4 times in a row. The letter sequences are so predictable that this leads people to think the language is artificial or machine-like in its construction. What do you think? Was there artificial intelligence centuries ago? So let's look at what we have in the end. A work scientifically proven to belong to the 15th century, which at first glance appears to be a medical handbook, but when examined more deeply turns into a complete encyclopedia of impossibilities. Is this book giving us the key to something? Is it a lost language that has yet to be discovered? Or is it the most intelligent fraud or prank in history? The Voynich Manuscript continues to preserve its silence and its mystery, and perhaps what makes it so fascinating and captivating is exactly this: a secret that waits to be solved, but may never be definitively solved. What do you think? Will this secret ever be revealed?